Health and wellness programs all over New York State are helping people learn to live healthy and manage chronic conditions, but not all implementation sites are equipped to deal with participants with disabilities.
I'm a person with a mobility impairment and I don't look like all the other participants. People sort of almost freak out when we come in because we're outside what the traditional person might be. Oftentimes we're met with anxiety. Oh my goodness, what are we going to do? How are we going to do this? And that does not feel welcoming.
I've been to a lot of places where sometimes just people standing up and moving around make it difficult for me to keep up with what's going on in the front of the room.
Over the next few minutes, we'll go over a few changes your site can make in structure and mindset to become accessible to a much wider array of participants. First off is communication. The tone that your workshop presents starts with how you promote it. Here are a few simple concepts that greatly increase the accessibility of your marketing materials. Make sure your materials are presented in a variety of formats: large print, audio, braille, electronic, etc. Use images of persons with disabilities alongside those without, and above all, reflect a willingness to accommodate participants and provide clear instructions on how to request accommodation.
The first thing that the provider can do, even when they're calling and setting up the appointment, is ask them, do you have need of an interpreter? Do you have in need of any kind of assisted services?
For somebody who is legally blind, visually impaired, I mean, a big thing for me would be obviously whether or not the materials, whatever materials they're utilizing to share or disseminate information, is in a format that I can utilize.
I'll talk to people ahead of time and see if the instructors are willing to verbalize everything that's like on a PowerPoint, or give me things written ahead of time or in an electronic format.
But it's not just the marketing materials that need inclusionary communication. Instructors should make sure to use a people-first mindset when communicating to persons with disabilities. For example, rather than saying John is disabled, you might say John has a disability. This reinforces the notion that John is defined as a person, not as a disabled person.
Providers have to understand that there is a different approach when you're dealing with someone that is a non-English speaking person. It doesn't matter if they're signing and talking at the same time. It doesn't matter if they're ASL or PSE or their lip readings. It's just like when you deal with people of different languages.
Above all, the communication needs to be welcoming and inclusive. Next up is access. Once you've got persons with disabilities registered for a workshop, you have to make sure that the implementation site is accessible.
I've been paralyzed 26 years. Location is important to me.
Right.
Is it accessible? Can I actually? So I've been in lecture halls where there's numerous little steps.
Right.
Where I'll go right down those steps.
One step for me is the equivalent of 2 flights for somebody else. Some kinds of health courses require a weigh-in. When I go to a class and the only way to be weighed is to stand up on a scale, I know this class is not for me.
Here are some questions to keep in mind. Is the entranceway to the site accessible? Does the site have reserved parking spaces? Are bathrooms properly equipped and easy to access? To perform a full on-site evaluation, visit the website provided. One of the most important aspects of inclusionary culture is flexibility. Although thorough preparation will help in many cases, every person is different and every person handles their disability differently.
As long as people are open to listening to what I need and what works for me and talking about things ahead of time and making a game plan before I go into the class, I feel really welcome.
Instructors are great, I think, just like any other teacher, you got good ones and bad ones, but, the ones that, are, open to suggestions, that if you keep an open mind, there's a lot that you can learn, from others and other conditions.
In my opinion, it's very, very helpful if they ask them if they need an interpreter. They ask them if they have the preferences. They ask them about language. Those things really, really help. And I have that choice. I have that ability to make the decision myself.
Where do you like to sit in a class?
Back. In the back of the room?
In the back of the room?
The field pool
That's really cool, kids.
Real cool, yeah.
Chronic health conditions can further compromise the independence and quality of life of persons with disabilities, and the effects can also be greater than for other adults. It's important that we find ways to increase their inclusion in the classes and workshops we offer.
The need for these kinds of classes, which can teach people how to live a healthy lifestyle, are at least as critical as for people without disabilities, or maybe even more.
Having classes like this would be extremely helpful because at least it's a more controlled setting, and in a more controlled setting, hopefully you'll be able to provide that kind of information so that we can access it, since it's so much more difficult out, as I call it, out in the real world.
Make people happy, make me happy.
To learn more, and it makes you happy.
Happy, yeah.